Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to introduce Matt Zinman, who is with us today. And he came highly recommended, Nancy Coldham, our friend from Canada. I'm starting to get lots of friends from Canada, and I'm just so excited because people from Canada, they're cool, right? And of course, a lot of people are cool. But I'm really excited to have Matt here today to talk about his book and everything he has going on, which is so much. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Matt, and learning more about the work that you do.
Thanks, Kim.
Um, I just want to put a shout out to the International Society for Organization Development and Change. They are the sponsors of this event. isodc.org if you're interested. It's a great organization that is full of people from all over the world that want to create great change, positive change in leadership in our world. So please check them out if you're interested. And yeah, Matt, I'll just say a few things about you, Matt. I know I could go on forever, but I'll just say a few things. Matt is a speaker, author, course creator, and podcast host devoted to personally enriching the happierness. I love that word. Happierness of at least 10 million people by 2030. His highly acclaimed book, Z-isms, Insights to Live By, embodies his experiences as an entrepreneur, athlete, single parent, caregiver, nonprofit founder, burnout beater, and depression defeater. And mental health it's one of the most important things these days, isn't it? Matt has since adapted the book into skill building programs that enable learners to apply the concepts and techniques from Z-isms to enrich their lives for good. So
Well,
welcome, Matt. I'm going
thank
to
you.
turn the slides over to you. And I know you want this to be a very interactive session, but I'm going to be quiet for a little bit.
Well, feel free to chime in, Kim. Thank you so much for
Okay.
that kind introduction. And welcome everyone, of course, and a special thanks to ISODC for hosting. It's an honor to be here and with all of you to share this time together. As Kim said, this is an interactive experience. I'm going to be asking you at times to type in the chat and do breakouts with yourselves if we if we had time and so forth. So as you see, we're talking about Z-isms 3.0. That takes it from the book through the courses to now in this format around, like, what do you call these core concepts? Uncommon mindset techniques to instill resilience and presence. And the subheads here with some alliteration in passion and purpose, perception, and positivity. So
Hey,
now,
Matt, can I say something real quick?
yeah, please.
Of course, I love the word resilience. I think, it's something that we all need more of today. But the word presence really stuck with me because I think the busier we get and the more distractions we have, being present is it's just so important. I mean, I just showed my class Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, right? How your body language shapes who you are. And anyway, I'm just a huge fan of presence and being in the present
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think you'll appreciate some of the things that speak to that.
All right.
And I'd like to start us off with a an activity. It's going to sound a little bit like a joke, more of a story, but it's not. But the important thing here is I want you to pay close attention. Like, it's going to happen fast. Give this your undivided attention and try and follow along. Okay, so there are these three travelers. I told you, it's not like a joke. And they're riding along in their car, and they decide they want to stop for a rest and find a restful hotel, and one they find
No.
highly rated. The innkeeper, Norman, is there, some side humor, and they ask how much the room is, and he says that it's $30. Each of the travelers takes 10 out, even money, go on their way to their room. But then the innkeeper realizes that he overcharged by 5. So he calls the bellhop in, gives the bellhop the $5 to return to these travelers. And the bellhop's like, well, they're going to be none the wiser. They didn't really tip me. So he pockets, or she potentially, $2, and then goes to give the $3 back to the 3 gentlemen. So naturally, each one gets $1 back. They each paid $9. Well, 9 times 3 is 27, obviously. The bellhop, pocketed 2. That's only 29. Well, what happened to the other $1?
I didn't know we were going to have to do math, Matt. No,
I
I'm just
know.
kidding.
You know, this is as you see, this is a perception activity.
I know, I'm just
This
kidding.
is in the book. And it's funny because I don't give the answer right away. I kind of lay it out. And then later in the book, I give the answer. And there's a reason why I'm sharing this with you. And the answer is that it's a little bit of a shell game. You're not really dealing with $30 here anymore. Once the $5 is given back, it adds to the equation, so to speak. So it's the way that the story is told that kind of tricks the math into ending up at 29. The purpose of sharing this with you is to recognize how easy it is, even though I cheated a little bit, to lose track of details. No matter how hard you're trying, how much attention you're giving something, we all have different perceptions of what's happening in different ways. And to have the perspective and recognize that you're not always going to get it 100%. And what you experience is just an interpretation. So now, to make this most beneficial, just to put things into context, as Kim mentioned, this all flows from my life's work, my book. A lot of it is personal. We're not talking about a single professional topic or best practices like leadership or communication. We're talking more here about a system that you'll hopefully understand when we get to the end. But it's more of being a mile wide than deep. So we're dealing with these holistic concepts and techniques to help you live more vibrantly. And we're going to personalize your focus and outcomes as well, because we're going to cover everything. Not everything applies to you. So in a minute, we'll get to what does. Little rule breaking here from best practices. Some of these slides are a little content heavy. It's going to be easier at times for me to ask you to just glance at them than to read you bullet by bullet. And because this is an interactive presentation, I do hope that everyone will participate with the engagement. I'm asking you to put some comments in the chat along the way. I did not expect anyone to have the answer to the missing dollar in the chat, and I wasn't going to leave you hanging too long. But I put a little camera symbol here because that is on some slides that you may decide to take a screenshot and use for during the conversation, as well as, we're talking about skill building here, what it is that you take away from our conversation here today. The other thing is we're talking about taming your distractions. So do your best, even though we're in a webinar, I'm not going to parent you here, but please try to be distraction free. And I can't multitask, I know that, and I don't know who really is good at it, except for what we're going to get to on the next slide. But one thing from a personal awareness standpoint is to notice your struggle with focus. Kim talked about how hard it is for us to stay present, and that is part of the issue, is how our focus shifts all the time. It's, the whole squirrel. Try and bring your focus back to what it is we're speaking to. And to that end is a universal truth. That being, for each of us, there's no substitute for experience. We all have come through all the many different experiences we have in our lives, the nature versus nurture. But what I would like you to consider are the following things. And this should come to mind fairly easily. Your top 2 professional accomplishments, your greatest triumphs, and your 2 major adversities overcome. And we're going to be referring back to this at some point midway, and you'll understand why. So take a quick shot if you need help, or just write these 3 things down, because I'm about to move on. So with respect to just all the background here. I'm going to move through this very quickly. You're still multitasking, working on what it is I just asked you to do. And while you're doing that, I'm going to just share a little bit about myself and answering those questions to help get to know me and put things again in the context. So I'm really on my third career now. I started in the world of marketing communication, mainly public relations agencies in and around Philadelphia, and got to the point in '02 where I started my own firm. And a few years into that, I decided to venture into the world of internships. I saw a market need to essentially, in the way I did it, I was kind of Johnny Appleseeding or installing internship programs at companies. I was running that as the nonprofit for a number of years, really up until the pandemic, which was kind of gave it the final blow. But it needed to happen. It was a lot of kicking and scratching. It put me on the path that I am now, beyond the book, to decide that I wanted to continue on in this, and I'm so glad I did. I've never been happier. And then my defining life experiences, some of which Kim mentioned in introduction. One of them that's been a common thread for me is as an ice hockey player. And we talked about Canada earlier. I spent many of summers training up in the great White North. And being a hockey player, still play to this day. Part of that journey is also being a single dad, and that happened in '02. It kind of coincided with my becoming an entrepreneur. Those two decisions were intertwined in needing that flexibility. But my son Jake was 2 at the time, so man in apartment, changing diapers, washing bottles is a real reality check. And also being a depression defeater. It's something since the book was published I've been out in front about, especially with the pandemic and the importance of normalizing the conversation as a man and discussing this openly, and more so through my lived experience, what it is that I've done, and I'll share with you in order to defeat depression. It's actually this month that I'm 10 years without an episode, and have the continued incentive not to ever fall that low. My brother, unfortunately, did succumb to that in 2012, and then my toughest among challenges, adversities overcome with my mom, and she had the distinction and unfortunately contracted HIV in a blood transfusion at the time that was happening, and they didn't know what was what, and she went through that, as did I with her, in those years. So beyond that, in being captain of Temple and my greatest triumphs, we went undefeated my senior year. So if you imagine that elation of if you're a hockey fan or just have the idea of gloves and sticks being thrown in the air, everybody jumping on one another, it's hard to top that point. But for me, it was also something that really helped me feel more a part of something. I really had a lot of doubts about myself at that age, deepening my friendships. There's a lot more to it. And then this is actually up in Canada. This was a barefoot pyramid, which is something that I did when I wasn't on the ice. This was one of the few times it
Which
was
one
done
is you?
at the time. I am on top.
Holy moly, that looks like a professional picture.
It is. We had a professional photographer in the book.
Oh, okay then.
And this was actually published in Ski Nautique magazine in 1982. And that was an experience. So thank you for indulging me and letting me share.
Matt, can I just say one thing real quick?
Yeah, please.
So, you talk a little bit about being unsure of yourself, and it wasn't until I got my PhD that I learned about the imposter syndrome.
Sure.
And it's such a real thing today, where people think, oh, I shouldn't be this, or I'm not really that, but I'm acting that way. They feel like they're faking it till they make it. And I just think that we're supposed to be where we are, right, and where we go. But it's definitely a real thing out there.
I mean, it's so well said, Kim. And we go through these cycles too. What happens with our life events? We might overcome imposter syndrome at one point, and then we get the next challenge, and we find ourselves right back there. And that's something we'll speak to as well in what applies. But I'm really glad you brought that up. And for me, in publishing the book, and you think, oh well, I want, a lot of people want to publish books. I'm done with it. I was actually going to go back to the nonprofit, but it also dawned on me that purpose of my writing it was not fulfilled, because the book speaks to a lot of techniques and concepts that don't lend themselves to be put into practice by just reading the book. So that's what led to the different courses, as well as the audio book, which also led to the podcast. So Insights to Live By has over now 100 episodes. I welcome you to enjoy. And then the 3 courses that build on one another, I adapted the chapters in, and the lead course for companies is started with the mindset reset, but that's also built in of the well-being reset, which I wholeheartedly believe is the closest remedy to cure burnout and prevent it and help people get and stay well, because there's an intensiveness to it that people typically don't put themselves through when they're addressing this in the corporate environment. Now, Happierness we'll talk about as well. It's not in the book. It actually evolves since the book as things continue to do, like this presentation, but there's more on that and resources on my site, and we'll come back to that. Now, first question I often get from people is, well, what's a Z-ism? And so I think I just throw it out here so you see straight away, we all have our insights to live by. These are the pearls of wisdom that we all share. And I'm going to ask you in the next minute or two, if you could, please put in the chat, what is that pearl of wisdom that you often find yourself sharing with others to enrich their lives? What is a Z-ism for you? Now, with the podcast, Insights to Live By, my guests come on. I do some solo shows too. They have to share 3 life lessons at the bottom end of the show. And now probably over those 100 episodes, 80, 90 of them are guest episodes. I've rarely had the same insight to live by from all of those guests. Of the over 200 Z-isms shared on the show, hardly ever an overlap. So there's a lot of life experience and wisdom out there. Kim, I see being lucky is preparedness meeting opportunity. So anyone who'd like to share, please feel free to do that. I'm going to keep going into the other definition of Happierness. And Happierness evolved because I wanted to speak, because we're talking about presence here, and I looked at what is a word for optimism in real time, and I couldn't find one, because optimism is about hopefulness. It's not present based, it's future based. And so Happierness represents that, but from a practical sense, it's also about being intentional, having that choice to develop a positivity reflex to the things that happen around us.
I love Wendy's comment.
Please,
she says she tries to think about things she can influence and let go of all those things outside of her influence. And that is so difficult to do. But it's an amazing skill.
And a skill it is. And that's also part of the equation. These themes are very much hitting home. Now, I wanted to speak to, just to frame more about what we're speaking to, you all being in the organizational development space or akin to it, also familiar with Association Training Development's talent model. For what it is we're speaking to here is about building personal capability. And for your purpose, in order to customize what it is that you get in terms of the most out of our conversation, it's more than just the 7 things that fit into that green section. The concepts and techniques we're speaking to really touch on all these other things that you see. So what I'd like you to do is consider these as tangible techniques and choose 3 that resonate most with you right now. And you see the little cameras on here too.
3 from within the box.
3 from within the box, or generally what's covered in the green. I mean, for the talent development capability model, we're really in and around communication, emotional intelligence, lifelong learning. That's really those several bullets there apply. But the power, what you're seeing in the box is really more aligned with what it is we're going to be covering here today. And that's what I mean by more of a mile wide. So hopefully you guys got that, but there's going to be more to it. When we talk about the importance of learning outcomes, but the issue here is that, again, just like a book isn't necessarily going to instill you with the skills that you need to put these into practice, the presentation's only going to get you so far. So I'd like you each to really look at these various learning outcomes and decide which are relevant to the skills that you just identified you see as something being important to you to work on. So different people, most of us have to contend with counteracting negative self-talk because we all have that inner critic. We're hardwired to deal with those automatic negative thoughts. That's something that's typically universal. Something, you may be a worrier. You may be somebody who is looking to boost your confidence or be more present. So there's a wide range here. And the reality is, as much as you may be devoted to self-evolvement, you can't do it all at once. And
I have to say, Grace, oh my gosh, Grace is a student at Eastern Michigan University, and she says you will never get a second chance to make a first impression. But remember, the first impression is not the last chance.
That's awesome. And as I was saying before, Grace, I've never heard that before.
I really love that.
Another original Z-ism. We all have our Z-isms, and thank you very much for sharing that. Now, as we get into our agenda, I just, because we're covering so much, it's going to be easier just to frame this out in sets of 3. So we're going to have our overall themes around pursuits for happierness, filters that shape reality being our challenges, the 3 forces of distraction being the problems. So in that, once we get through that, you've got the perspective around the problem format, we get into the solutions. What are the 3 mindset reset skills to apply, and really the benefits of applying them in terms of enriching your life. So on to the themes for the 3 pursuits of happierness: keeping things in perspective, being present, and staying purposeful. Now, these are not on a level playing field in the sense that you first have to keep things in perspective in order to be present. And in being purposeful in experiencing life and the joys of it, you can't experience that unless you're present. So presence, again, is really at the heart of this. And you'll see that slide again just to reinforce along the way. The 3 filters that shape reality: perception, mood health, and the superego. So let's touch on those. Perception. I started to talk about it with our opening story with the missing dollar, and recognizing also around happierness and the positivity reflex and making a choice about your circumstances, because optimism and pessimism apply to the same exact circumstances. And we can look at perception from a macro and a micro standpoint. And by that, I mean, we all have our different filters. And as you look at the bullets here, whether it be your values, how you're raised, your beliefs, the people around you, these are all variables that not only shape our reality, but create, distinguishes how one of us perceives something from another. And that's also important to recognize. This is kind of the nature versus nurture. That's the nurture part. Then the micro aspect of perception is to acknowledge that just because something feels real does not make it true. And we might all face sensory distractions. Were we really listening? We have distortions that happen in the dance when of interactions and interpersonal. And a lot of what I think about when it comes to perception as just a reminder is you look at it from the 5 senses. And you might, well, we usually take in information from sight and sound, and it doesn't really distinguish, well, how am I different from someone else? But if you think of smell and particularly taste, and how we all have different tastes, well, if you extrapolate that and say, well, we all perceive things through our sight and our sound as differently as we all have different tastes, you'll recognize how that variability applies to perception overall. So there are a lot of moving parts. I'm just going to touch on this slide mainly because it's one of the only things I learned in college that I still refer to. And you may recognize the sender-receiver model here.
Oh, yeah.
All the different thoughts that we have.
BizCom.
Right, yeah, the communication theory class. Now, you may have heard the stat that we all have 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. It's actually not true. That stat got out and never was able to be pulled in. That is wrong. However, we do have closer to 6,000 a day, and that's 6.5 per minute of your waking hours. Still a lot. So a lot has to go right for you to get it right. And Kim, you may recognize this is broadbent model, meaning each one of those balls represents a thought, and only one can get through at a time to comprehend it. Yeah. And I make fun of myself because I have man brain. So I recognize this as a disadvantage that I have no choice but to focus on one thing at a time. Okay, over to the perception snapshot. This is something I'd like you to consider now, but also take a snapshot of the snapshot. This is also in the book, and it's quite simple. This is really about your external reality. And if you go down the left-hand column and whatever that is to you, these are pretty common to how people would compartmentalize the things in their life. And the quick question is, well, would you put a positive or a negative next to those? Now, if your basic needs are met and hopefully your personal health, people around you, your loved ones are all healthy, there's a lot to be grateful for. And everything else is circumstantial. And so there's a greater depth to this activity about gratitude, about recognizing what will it take to shift something from the negative column and asking yourself, is this really all that bad? Is this temporary? Put things in perspective. That's really what this is about. So over to our second filter being mood health, which is also referenced as a chapter in the book. It's not a clinical term, but it's really referencing the fact that we all have our challenges when it comes to managing our moods. On the clinical side, if it is going to reference something, it really is more on the side of like depression, anxiety, bipolar. It's not getting into the more complex aspects of clinical mood disorders. And this scale is in the book. It's kind of helpful to me, like from my experiences with depression and whatnot. It's almost like a thermometer, and knowing where I am, in that normal range, whatever that may be. And if I'm starting to sink lower, what do I need to do to bounce back? So from a practical standpoint, mood health is about it being universal and recognizing that really we all have to manage a biochemical reality, right? All the chemicals, serotonin, dopamines, and everything in and around our brain chemistry affect us day in and day out. And that's going to create that filter on any given day. And everyone experiences mild depression and knows the difference and what that's like to be wading through quicksand. And really the question of depression is how deep.
And Matt, are you going to talk about like how, when you're in a situation where you're feeling down or in a bad place, how you get out of it?
I will.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Next slide, as a matter of fact. You are spot on, Kim. So when we're talking about intentional mood management, actually the slide after this, but intentional mood management, this is another takeaway. I encourage you to be intentional. Come up with a mood booster that starts with an hour. How would you divide up the pie chart, but really then break it down to only 10 minutes? So these are just examples. Everyone can do 1 minute of gratitude, whether that's from that perception snapshot or something else, or you can see for yourselves what is here. Everyone likes music, whatever that music may be. I think that's an easy one to be putting in. And then this is really your prescription for what do you do when even if you have to just get up in the middle of the day or have a stressful day. This is a good 10-minute routine to put yourself through, or you could go up to an hour if that's available to you.
I've been hearing this phrase grounding a lot lately, where like you literally take your socks and shoes off and you put your feet in the grass.
Oh, 100%. And that has a lot to do with presence too, Kim. Literally about being where your feet are.
Yeah, I just love that.
And I have to do the grass. I'm not really big on barefoot and grass, but I totally get where you're going with that. But I have a lot of resources on my page under the Z-isms tab about mood health. I've got interviews on my podcast with National Institute of Mental Health experts. How do you talk to your kids about suicide? I was interviewed on a number of podcasts. There's one around giving voice to depression, and it was really an intimate interview, 2 parts. 12 to 13,000 listens so far, so I'm really proud of that. And that's what you see in the top part and other resources and links there. Now, to your question, Kim, something from the courses is also available on the site, this Depression Defeater. This is kind of an extension of that mood booster plan. It's more specific to almost in case of depression, break glass. You know, what would you do? And there are lists of coping skills that go with this in terms of how would you fill this out. And then this is meant to be a one-page handy tool. Now, for me, the way that I've been able to defeat it is through a 3-day rule, because everybody's going to have a down day as an entrepreneur. All kinds of things happen, or the weather affects me. But no matter what, if I get to a third day, I self-parent, because I know that it's a lot more worth it to me on that scale to take action than to let things get worse. And so to not let things get worse, in my mood booster, I'm definitely working out. I got to sweat and on and on. So taking action on that third day, nipping it in the bud, is essential.
I had a friend one time, she said, if you're having a really bad day, like it just sucks on every level, she says, take a little siesta. And she said, sleeping like resets everything. And I've done that a few times. Of course, I try to do it in little small other ways, right?
Yeah, you do the power naps,
Yeah,
it's like, look, whatever works.
Something to be said for that.
Just know thyself and what's going to help.
Yeah.
Now, into the superego, this is pretty straightforward, right? If you need a refresher on the distinguishing, what Dr. Freud says between the others, it's right here on the screen. But your superego is your inner critic. It's your bully. And this is, to Kim's point, where imposter syndrome comes about and confidence fluctuations. But it's important to remember, what I want to emphasize here is that while we have to recognize we can't control our thoughts, but we can control whether we allow them to control us. And this is, brings us to pushing back against your inner critic with your inner coach.
Oprah calls the ego edging God out. I've also heard it called edging goodness out.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, it's about knowing thyself and being more aware of what's what. What I think is important here from a practical standpoint, whether it's your inner critic or your inner coach, first is to recognize, well, what is it that you're saying to yourself, right? Involuntarily from the inner critic side. Try and really pinpoint and tune into what are the common themes there, and then. Yeah, we're starting to get into affirmation territory with inner coach, but it's really also what is the antidote to the things that your inner critic is saying to you. Now, what I'd like you also to do now, and feel free to put this in chat that we're going to keep moving, is that it's important to disassociate your inner critic from yourself, because your inner critic is not you. And in recognizing, like, my inner critic's name is Fred. So by giving Fred, not just a name, but humanizing, I won't go into all the detail, but, Fred's personality, or, it's not like it's an imaginary friend. I don't get too deep here, but the reality is when I have those inner critic thoughts, I tell Fred to, piss off. I recognize it's not me. So I think you'll find this to be extremely helpful, and encourage you to follow through. Name your inner critic. It should be somebody that you don't associate with, like a family member. It should be a name that you really don't know anyone, so that when you think of it, I don't know any other friends, is the point. Okay. All right. Now we're getting into the other side of the issue, the problems. Those were the challenges. Now we're talking about beyond the filters that shape reality, the presence paradigm. Now, life currencies, this is kind of our in-between, is to recognize a lot of people think of time as the key life currency, about time management, but there's also energy and there's presence. So naturally, time is a constant. Energy is going to vary. It ebbs and flows. Presence is an absolute. It's intentional. You're either present or you're not, and making that conscious effort. Now, more specifically, when it comes to time, the question is, well, what did you do? What is your productivity? That's how we refer to it. Energy is more about how do you feel, and affiliate with your well-being. With presence, it's about what did you notice? What did you experience? This is about enrichment, because if you're not present, you're missing out on a lot. And that's really where the presence paradigm comes in. Kim, you made a point earlier, and I truly believe that an utmost source of unhappiness for a lot of people is living in the not now. We do not realize how unpresent we are. And when you think about it, like when we were kids, or your kids, everything is the present. Everything is what is happening. But somehow, as we get older and life complexities take over and our brains do what they do, we almost have to fight to get back to the present. And that's really what this is about. And recognizing that and starting to catch yourself in beginning to at least be aware of being not present is key. So let's get into 3 forces of distraction: your past baggage, future uncertainties, and your current ants. I'm going to move through this fairly quickly because it's so straightforward. Your past baggage are your resentments, your regrets, your guilt, your failures, your traumas, and shame, for example. Now, when you look at past baggage, again, in customizing what your takeaway is here, I'd like you to pick 2. If there are 2, what would be the 2 that you would focus on that you think, I do hold grudges, or I do feel a certain way about something that happened, I'm not letting go. So do that, okay? Because we rehash. That's what this is about.
You keep the song "Let It Go, Let It Go" is in
Yes,
my head.
exactly. Supposed to get through.
Oh.
Now, future uncertainties: worry, anxiety, fears, the phantom conversations that we have, assumptions, and even jealousy.
Oh.
So everything that we're talking, especially worry, I think people really can acknowledge that whatever we're worrying about isn't necessarily certain to happen. That's the point of what it is, and how we're going to fight back on these forces of distraction. Now, the automatic negative we prehash is also the point here. Now,
Matt,
yeah.
Jay says the chat is so good right now. Jay says, when I become aware I am not being present, I start to just call out everything around me, what I'm doing. It helps me get back to the moment.
I love that. I love that. If I had another hand, I'd heart it just like somebody else did. Thank you.
Yeah.
For that, Jay. Into our forces of distraction. Again, this is kind of problem solution. So we're at the far side of these different challenges and problems that we're up against in bolstering our resilience and our presence. Automatic negative thoughts. These are the toughest ones because this is how our brains are wired. We ruminate. And the challenge is that we also have that negativity bias. So we talk about the 6,000 plus thoughts that we have in any given day. That same research points to around 80% of them are negative, and we don't even realize it. So that's something that you're not going to be able to control, but you don't want to let control you. And are you rehashing in the present conversations that were just had, arguments? So again, this comes back to the Happierness reflex, looking for silver linings, and we'll talk more about that. So here is our transition slide back to our overall themes. What we just talked about is really putting everything in perspective. Now we're going to get into the beyond the reality filters and the distractions that we just went through. We are now getting into your mindset reset skills. Those being self-kindness, earned confidence, and amplified awareness. And what's really important here, while you may have heard of these and think, yeah, I get it, really go the extra step here. These are skills. These are skills for you to develop and how that applies. So the first with self-kindness, it's a buy-in question. It's, well, why be anything less than kind to yourself? Like, literally ask yourself that question to buy into it. And hopefully that's rhetorical. And if it's not, if you struggle with that, then you know where to start. But self-kindness is absolute. There's really no in between. You're either being kind to yourself or you're not. So self-kindness is a lot about releasing past baggage. It's not kind to yourself to hold on to regrets and resentments and so forth. And so this really is the antidote. You got to draw the line that your automatic negative thoughts can't cross, is another application for self-kindness. And overall, in personal development, I see what I think is the greatest challenge being that it's so vague, because you might have a confidence or self-esteem or whatever it is in your self-evolvement that you want to improve, but it can be very difficult to get from here to there. But when you look at self-kindness as absolute as it is, that's kind of your barometer in terms of moving forward. So rely on that and your self-compassion, accept your imperfections, and choose progress over it. Okay. Earned confidence. This is actually my chapter 1. It's one of the major reasons why I wrote the book, in recognizing that you're fully capable of coping with whatever happens. We are still standing. You've proven to yourself that you've overcome every other adversity. So why would you need to worry about anything? You just take it as it comes, because you'll overcome it just the same. This is also absolute in terms of drawing a line. So just deal with the real. And this comes back to where we started, around not just your professional achievements and triumphs and adversities overcome. So it's great to take stock and look at that. The adversities are really even more the driver of applying your earned confidence. All right. So it's undeniable that you need not worry or be anxious about anything uncertain. You needn't have phantom conversations with yourself that haven't happened yet and then ultimately never do. So those are habits also that you're going to want to need to catch yourself doing, which will then help you not do. So it's irrefutable. You're still standing. So just to take it to the extreme, imagine it's a theorem. The greatest mathematicians and scientists in all of human history could not disprove earned confidence. That absolute. Now, over to our ants, your amplified awareness is really where you need to work at your mindset reset skill. Catching yourself in the act, repelling those ants, naming your inner critic as part of that. Catching yourself complain is a good one as well, because a lot of these things happen under the surface and the complaints kind of seep out. So if you're a complainer, start there and work your way backwards and through that you're being negative, and that thoughts aren't necessarily facts, or a complaint can be reframed by choosing the better side of it. So there are things that yes.
Abby says, during moments of doubts or breakdowns, I remind myself of all the other times I felt this way and I've made it through.
100%, Abby.
Yeah.
So, and it was, I think a lot of us come to this conclusion, but through a lot of adversity to, once overcome, to realize that. And now, Abby, you can put a name to it, being earned confidence, because I'm sure it is well earned for everyone here. But the goal here is to extinguish your ruminations, including your rehashing and your prehashing. So in and around amplified awareness, purposeful self-kindness comes into play, being more in the habit of giving yourself grace rather than being in the habit of beating yourself up. So do your self-check-ins, call out your inner critic by name, whatever name fits in there, and reframe that with your inner coach with support and encouragement. Again, affirmations do come into play.
And some folks in the chat were talking about language and how important language is. Lanita said she loves that the language earned confidence. So you need to speak kindly to yourself. Thank you,
Lanita. Lanita's my buddy. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah. Nice to see your picture. Now, we're here for an activity, and I'd like you to look at this word cloud. And in the chat, I'd like you just don't overthink it. What are the first 3 words that pop out to you from what it is that you see? Everyone just Boom. Just jump in and chat. Boom, boom, boom. Type it out. Hit send. Positivity, passion, love. Love, kindness, positivity. Joy, fun, truth. Thank you, Abby. Positivity, humor, pleasure, Kim. Yes. So you guys can continue to look at that. Now, the question I have, and I'm just going to pull some of these words out because there are a lot of them. What do all of these words have in common? Now, you can, if you like to, you can answer in the chat. What do they all have in common? In fact, because it's so messy, I'll come to this other slide and just a little bit of a cleaner look. There are a little less of them, but the point is still the same.
Ooh, I'm screenshotting that one.
So they're all positive, Jay, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Enjoying life? Yes. Yes, this is all very close. The answer is that all of these things are only possible when you're present.
Mm.
So the intention here is to recognize the high value motive that I'd like you to come out of this conversation with, to work at these skills, because these are all the things that you miss out on when you're caught up with your ruminations or pre or future hashing. Okay. All right. So now, just to get a broad picture of what it is that we've covered, it's almost a problem solution look, the forces of distraction here, the mindset reset skills. It's not apples to apples, but generally speaking, your self-kindness is going to help you with your past baggage, but also your ants. Your earned confidence really is that line to recognize I don't need to get caught up in uncertainties. I can just deal with the real. And then your amplified awareness is your other mindset reset skill to take on your automatic negative thoughts. And look, this is a lifelong thing, and you're never going to be perfect, but it's something that is truly going to enrich your life, especially in and around presence. So that brings us to the three facets of an enriched life. We're doing pretty well on time here, I'm glad to say. So
Yeah.
I'm not feeling rushed. Now, this is a fact, continuing on with the idea of the benefits. It's important to me, because I hope it's important to you, not to be investing your time being here and kind of getting your arms around all of this and then coming away in a week from now, it's like, what was that webinar? Because if you're really going to get something out of this, it starts here.
Yeah.
It doesn't end here. And so what I want to talk about a little bit more beyond the word cloud and the things that happen in the present are why to continue to work at this. So it begins with self-care and prevention, then energy consciousness, experiential mindset. Certain things in terms of being aware, preventing things from happening. A lot of people don't think of that. If you're present, you can actually avoid problems. Yeah, sure. We're talking about being in shape and all the things that you see here and the importance of your health, not looking to preach. But the reality is self-care and prevention has a lot more to do with all these other things. And your empathy, your emotional intelligence overall, how you resolve conflict, that's really what we're getting at. And if you're not taking care of yourself, or you're really tired and ragged, you're going to be more prone, for example, to lose your cool. That's really where that's relevant. So there's a chapter in the book about being a life athlete and how few really rarely consider the never happened. It's a chapter about applied prevention in there as part of this.
Yeah, and I think I know you're not really stressing it, which I understand, but
Sure.
Well, you are a little bit, but or not a little bit, quite a lot. But
Okay.
I don't know what I'm saying here. I think that when people are living their best life, they have a certain amount of exercise, right, in their life. They're moving, they're eating better. That doesn't mean you can't have the Haagen-Dazs, right? But they're doing positive actions on a regular basis. And I just think it's a very holistic thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, and it's important to reinforce. And I know, acknowledging again, we're going the mile wide, and I do whole presentations on any number of one of these topics by themselves. So it's hard to just skim the surface, because you do want to go deeper, and those are
Right.
essential points. Kim, someone asked if we can do the sharing of the slides, and so Kim, I will do that.
Maybe if you could put
And
them in
people can
PDF
ask
form or something like that.
for them
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
Now, another resource that is on the site, again, from the courses, is actually also in the book, is a self-care report card. I am not, a nutrition or fitness expert. I really do stay in my lane. But this is the one piece that I developed for the book that I think is really clean in a way, as a tool to help you just kind of do a self-check-in and see how it's going. It only takes a few seconds to fill this out. So you can download that on the site, as with the Depression Defeater. So over to An Enriched Life, the aspect of energy consciousness. This is one of those presentations that I speak on exclusively in and around first your personal energy. Now, as an entrepreneur, we kind of go back to that time energy in the paradigm. I have found it a lot more effective, when I can have the freedom to do so, to manage my days based on my personal energy, not by scheduling my time. So when I am at my best, I'm doing the hardest things on my to-do list. When I'm finding myself having a challenge writing a cohesive sentence because I'm fried, I look for the lower things, or I step away, and I work at home, the laundry still has to get done as well. So if you haven't thought about that, as in looking at managing your life currency that way, give it a try. I think you'll find it of value.
And for me, that's earlier in the morning. So that's usually when I'm
like
freshest.
knowing thyself.
Yeah. Yeah. So that means I should pick the hardest things first, right?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can. But look, some days the tail wags the dog. You don't have control over how things
Isn't
go.
that the truth?
When you can. Now, interpersonal energy is something also essential, because it's very easy for us to overlook at any given time that we are energy beings. We do affect one another in our conversations. Your moods are transferable in terms of how you treat one another. So I think we all have a responsibility in that sense to keep our bad moods to ourselves, but it can also be to cheer someone up, when they're not recognizing that they need a lift. But for yourself, you want to set boundaries. You want to recognize the vibes, and then again, there's a whole category here around upgrading your tribe. Not an original thought about the people you surround yourself with, and taking inventory and deciding where you might need more insulation, or where you might need a new friend in your group. Okay, and then universal energy, that really does take us more into the realm of the law of attraction, which isn't for everyone, and each to your own. But it's what you put out into the world, how you align your thoughts and words and feelings. Personally, I think it's about expectations.
I love the law of attraction.
Yeah, I mean, if you boil it down, because there's any complexity to it, like the simplest form is that what you expect tends to happen. So,
I first heard about it when I watched the movie The Secret.
Oh yeah, I mean that's at the foundation. Rhonda Burns. The Secret is referenced in the book. And I kind of leave it to her and her quotes, because I'm not the expert on that as well. But if you're into that, it's just a matter of recognizing it as its own energy consciousness. Now, with experiential mindset, we're getting into aspects of mindfulness, which is really about just being present and observing things as they happen. And I love the suggestion Jay made earlier about just taking inventory and bringing yourself into the present about what's going on around you. That's a great one. And as we mentioned, being where your feet are. Gratitude is part of this. And I'm not going to spend much time on these slides with respect to what we have left also, because this is pretty straightforward on the experiential mindset side.
I love that frog.
Yeah, it's my buddy Myron, I think his last name was. But look, the Z-ism that wasn't in the book, this is actually my current one. He said, "What's your favorite Z-isms?" Few good things in life happen by themselves. That takes you over to the imposter syndrome. applies to my now 23-year-old son, and getting him out of his comfort zone. I think that's an essential one as an anchor. So this is where your passion is. This is where things align for you. This is when you're present, you're able to do your inner work, as it were, the things that we're talking about, what it is that you're going to take away from this exchange. That's all about having the experiential mindset, as is Happierness, and choosing to make the best of every situation. If you're not familiar with the whole concept of Ikigai, the Japanese model around experiential mindset, I really like this. I don't think 2,000 years of wisdom can lie. They've got something smart here, more so than I possibly could. So props to Ikigai in and around.
I love that.
At the heart of things. So please go check that out. I wasn't really aware of it until I got into this, and I found it very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So over to living presently as we wind down here. It's easy for time to fly. The question is, are you having fun, or were you distracted? Which was the reason why time flew. And as a generality, I believe, as mentioned earlier, how when we're younger, we're more present, and then we have to fight to stay there. I think that's why our perception of time changes as we get older, and why time seems to go by faster, because we're less in the moment. And I want to remind you about the 1 hour booster, the things that we're talking around being intentional, prescriptive, and just being. And I'm bringing back some of the things that we covered that I think are really at the heart of the conversation.
Wow.
So again, here are your themes. There's a few more things I'd like to cover. And I can go over time, no problem. But for the people on lunch hour right now, I want to move through these last 5 minutes or so with a few things.
And can I just say, Abby says energy is contagious. I'm glad you brought that up. It really shows the importance of your circle.
100%. I gotta meet Abby. Abby, reach out on LinkedIn, please. Anybody is welcome to, of course.
Oh, that's awesome.
So this is a snapshot of all the sets of 3 that we went over, so you can see it at once. And I think you'll see this as, in part, the other slide where you have the antidotes to the challenges and problems that are listed here. Now, back to the slide that we saw earlier, in and around your learning outcomes. This is that very same slide. And the question is, just to refocus you on the things that you acknowledge are most important to you, what are the things that you're now taking away from any which one of these bullets? I'd say, again, keep it to 2 or 3 that are at least most important to you, on which you will benefit from focusing on improving.
That's so funny. The first time I saw that, I kind of focused on a negative one. And now I'm really I focused on the last one. And I just think that it's because you've put me in a positive space that what's the word? I'm more positive, right?
Well, energy is contagious. It's a good example, and just relentless with positivity. Now, these are also some prescriptive things that I recommend. If you're not getting the slides, this is definitely, these next couple I want to take you to take a shot of, and I'm just going to list these bullets real fast and go over them in the sense of the things that we discussed throughout the presentation today, and where do you begin, right? With everything we went over, these are your grounding activities and things to consider. And we've talked about all of these things. Again, the website has a lot of content there for free. Have at it. That's what it's there for. And hopefully you'll find those tools helpful. And
what is your website?
I'm mattzinman.com, but I'll have it for you in a moment.
Okay.
And then here, in being more prescriptive about what to practice, remember, going back to humanizing your inner critic and empowering your coach with self-kindness, drawing that line, the mood booster activity, mindfulness activities. We have a gravity activity that's really for a longer webinar that's referenced here. I didn't have time for that today, but it's really about being where your feet are. And back to what Jay talked about, is just kind of stopping what you're doing and being in place and and taking it in and grounding yourself like that, embedding gratitude when you can, and aligning your energy and giving yourself the mindset reset, striving for more. Wow. Now, one thing I want to acknowledge is the challenge that I have with these courses, with these techniques, is that they are experiential, and my programs also involve cohorts. So as much as you can go on my site, as much as I could talk to you about any of this, it's only going to get you so far. You have to experience it to know what it is, which creates a challenge for me. So anyone who sees this, whether here in real time or afterwards, I look to do pre-guarantee trials, which is to say, if you took it and you don't like it, I don't have to refund you. It's going to speak for itself. So the mindset reset is equivalent to a full day workshop that's then spread over maybe a slightly long period, with a midpoint meeting and an endpoint meeting. And I'll let any company do this for free for some of this, for their people to try this out. It's the only way you're going to know what it is. I'm happy to do it. I actually just finished my second session with a bank in Boston this morning. Just an amazing conversation, lights me up to facilitate those when I do them. So please reach out to me.
Who are the people that you're doing this with? Are they senior leaders? Are they frontline employees? Are they middle managers?
It really varies.
Okay.
It's interesting. First of all, anybody can benefit from it on one hand, but the applications, Kim, I'm not mentioning them by name, but this is two different groups, and part of the reason why they're doing it is from a team building standpoint, because there's dissension. It's almost an intervention. They're trying to not beat each other's throats, I guess. And it's worked, and it's been a great bonding experience for everybody. And tissue boxes flying around and laughter. The next line. So I really would love to share this with anyone. That's why you don't write a book or create all this content for it not to be consumed. And I really hope you reach out, which is why now the audiobook and the ebook are free on the site. I just made this possible last month, and for the time being, it's going to be the case. And look, download it and give it 15 minutes.
So anybody attending here today gets a free ebook, right?
Anybody here today or anywhere, anytime. Look, I talked about 10 million people. It's not going to happen by itself. I'm hoping that the things that you experience here, specifically the book, is something that you like well enough to tell other people to get it for free. There's a lot of free books out there. Why read this one? Give it 15 minutes. You'll find out. I think you'll want to keep going. So there are any number of ways to get in touch with me. And I do encourage you to explore the site resources. This is a slide I was trying to figure out how to get my name on more times than any other. I succeeded. You can see is the case. But reach out, and for your own benefit, for self-reflection purposes, or if you're with someone right now to talk about these things, these are some of the questions as an activity you might consider doing together.
Oh, that's a great screenshot one.
Okay. There's a little camera there.
Yes.
So relearning outcomes, the skills you identified, the actions you'll take, and the prescriptive activities that you'll do to build the skills. So as with the book and then into the courses, and particularly here, there's nothing I can offer you passively that's going to improve your life. I'm just hoping to give you the guidance and tools and techniques in order to come away from here and work at this. And because it's going to be so enriching, particularly when it comes to presence and being more resilient, that you'll find the motivation to keep going, because it's so much at the heart of what's going to make your life better. And that's what I do. And I so appreciate, again, the opportunity to be here with you all and spending the time together. And I do hope anyone reaches out if I can be of any help.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks for having me, Kim.
That was incredible. You know what? I think COVID changed everything, didn't it? COVID, it just changed our lives so much. But we can still have some good come from it, right? It was a horrible thing to experience, and there was a lot of bad that came from it, but we can still use some of that to transform ourselves, right? Into becoming the people that we really want to become.
I mean, if it wasn't for COVID, I'd still be running my nonprofit, putting internship and mentoring programs in
Yep.
place, and none of this would have been created.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone, for all your kind words in the chat here. I will also say that on the website, it's not acknowledged in here, there is a training that I did here, very similar for the Boston ATD. That recording is on my site as well.
Okay.
But Kim's going to have this. But what's also there
Yep. I'll
is
send it out to everyone, the link.
it's a 2-page article on that site, on the Presence and Resilience site under my speaking, that really gives a nice 900 word summary of everything that you just went through, and it really encapsulates it as the system is really what this is intended to be, between especially the mindset reset skills and self-kindness and earned confidence, and those being so definitive. That's really what I hope are the anchors that help everyone here live better. All right, thank you.
Do you have a visual person? Because your visuals are just amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm probably more visual than audio. That's fair.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you. Although I had an intern help me with this one, so I can't claim credit.
Okay, well,
Thank you, Kim.
it's remarkable. And I can't thank you enough. And I want to encourage everyone to check out Matt's website. And I'm telling you, you put me in a better place today, Matt. So I really appreciate that.
I appreciate you all. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for having me.
You too.